Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Ayuba Ila. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
Hello, good morning and welcome. It is Daybreak on Trust TV. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
And yes, here we bring you perspectives and analysis of issues of national concern and also other issues that you need to be aware of to take informed decisions. And talking about information, let's start with the headlines before us this morning. Kogi police warn violent politicians move against thugs.
Doyin Okugbe resigns as Peter Obi's presidential campaign DG.
FG to stop cash withdrawal from public accounts.
And now the details. Against the backdrop of increasing political violence in Kogi State, the AIG Zone 8, Asafa Adekunle, has vowed to deal decisively with politicians who refuse to play the game by its rules, particularly those going around tearing posters and destroying the billboards of their opponents. The AIG disclosed this during a meeting of his command on Tuesday at the State Police Headquarters, Lokoja. In attendance at the meeting were also politicians, leaders of political parties, civil society organizations, religious bodies, among others. He told the politicians to rethink and stay off the violent approach as the means to achieve their ambition in the forthcoming election in Kogi, stressing that the era of violence, thuggery, ballot snatching, and other vices during the election is over. The AIG added that the Zone 8 command has resolved to be impartial, ready and professional in their approach before, during, and after the forthcoming election.
The Director General of the Labour Party Campaign Council, Doyin Okugbe, has resigned his position. The announcement was contained in a letter he addressed to the LP presidential candidate Peter Obi on Tuesday. Okugbe's resignation followed his conviction for breaching the Money Laundering Act by a federal high court sitting in Abuja on Monday. The Labour Party chieftain, who was formerly a member of the People's Democratic Party, was subsequently sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. However, the presiding judge, Justice Ijoma Ojukwu, gave Okugbe an option of 500,000 naira fine on each of the 26-count charges, totaling 13 million naira, for which he was found guilty.
Meanwhile, the federal government says it's putting measures in place to stop cash withdrawal from federal, state and local government accounts. The Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, Modibo Hamman Tukur, revealed this on Tuesday at a parley with Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Tukur further stated that most cash withdrawals from government accounts, including payments, were often in excess of the cash withdrawal limit provided by the Money Laundering Act. He said this exposed innocent public servants to being liable to imprisonment. He further said governors and local government council chairmen will need to organize training for market men and women on how to use ATMs and POS services.
All right, now to some of the packages we have for you this morning. Nigeria's government on Tuesday received 22 bronzes stolen from the Benin Kingdom by the colonial administrators over a century ago, just as it tasked Britain and other countries holding onto such cultural assets to take a cue and return them where they belong. Trust TV's Shafiu Suleiman reports that the returned artifacts were officially handed over to the Nigerian government in line with signed agreement between the two countries.
It was a solemn and emotional event for both countries as 22 of the repatriated artifacts originally belonging to the Benin Kingdom returned home. It was a result of years of negotiations between the two countries anchored on sustained mutual relationship and trust.
I want to thank the federal government of Germany and its officials for these unprecedented moves that culminated in this event. In particular, I want to thank the heads of government and governments of the various German regions and their officials. I want to announce that Nigeria is not only seeking the return of Benin bronzes, but all Nigerian antiquities that were illegally or illicitly exported.
It belongs to us, and it's rightfully ours, and should be where where it belongs, which is here. But nevertheless, we we'll share it with the world, because for us it is a common human asset.
To the German government, in whose custody the stolen artifacts were kept for over 100 years, it's time to right the wrong and return the treasures to where they belong.
What would it mean to us to be deprived of our cultural heritage? Not to be able to marvel the Gutenberg Bible in Mainz, to be unable to admire Martin Luther's writings, to stand in front of a sculpture by Käthe Kollwitz in Berlin, or at Goethe's desk in Weimar. It evokes a sense of loss that I can hardly imagine. To you here in Nigeria, however, this loss has been your reality for your whole life. Today, we are here to return the Benin bronzes to where they belong.
This historic moment that brings together not only our two countries, but also our two continents, Europe and Africa, marks the start of something new. A different way of coming together that is grounded in mutual respect and interest in one another, and is driven by the desire to learn from each other.
And for Nigeria and Benin Kingdom, which the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says is on its way to becoming West Africa's cultural hub, it is a dream come true as they reunite with their cultural heritage and identity. Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Now, as state and federal government hospitals are struggling to attend to the health challenges of millions of Nigerians with few medical doctors, the NMA is calling for the protection and employment of more medical personnel to lighten the burden on the system. The call was made as part of resolutions reached at the end of the National Executive Council meeting of the association in Asaba. The report.
The national president, Dr. Uche, speaking after the meeting, said government should protect doctors by providing conducive work environment, which is crucial to physicians. He also called on the government to urgently employ more doctors to replace those that have abandoned their work for greener pastures to avoid overlaboring the remaining doctors. The association condemned the kidnap of doctors in the country, citing the case of Dr. Gidam, who was kidnapped in Borno State while on duty.
The neck of NMA seriously condemned the progressive kidnapping of doctors across this country. It has become a national pastime to relay the news of a doctor kidnapped almost every day and every week. We call on our government to humbly understand that from us, we have to also protect ourselves. If we are not protected, nobody should blame us for doing whatever we can within the limits of the law to protect ourselves. We use this opportunity to call especially on the government of Borno State to redouble the effort to secure the release of Dr. Alhaji Bula Magedam, who was kidnapped on the 15th of March, 2022 in Damasak. He has stayed long enough in captivity. Let them also employ more people, because as doctors are leaving, the little that are left now have excess workload and they get into burnout. NEC wish to thank the federal government and some state governments like the government of Delta State for paying the new hazard allowance, and call on the federal government to pay to our colleagues that are lecturers in basic medical faculties in our universities, because a doctor is a doctor.
The chairman said that.
All right, now the House of Representatives has again scheduled Thursday this week for the Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, to appear before it. The decision by the House during plenary on Tuesday came after the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, read a letter from the CBN Governor requesting that a rescheduled date be given to him to appear because he is out of the country for official assignment.
Reacting further to the letter, the Speaker stated that if Emefiele is still not back from his travel, his deputy can represent him to explain the controversial cash withdrawal policy.
I would like to know what that official assignment at this critical point in Nigeria that will keep him away for 2 weeks. So in my humble opinion, I think because this house will also more than likely close on Thursday for the Christmas break, I think we should resolve to invite the CBN governor to brief this house on Thursday morning. And if for any reason it is verified that he is unavoidably out of the country on Thursday, that he asks his deputy governor or anyone who is well equipped to fully brief this house so that we do not carry this thing onto next year.
Members frowned at Emefiele's non-appearance, noting that it is disrespectful to the Nigerian public and not only to the House.
The crafters of the Nigerian Constitution, Mr. Speaker, did not make error to create House of Representatives to call for public office holders to account for their activities on behalf of Nigerians. I think at this point in time it is quite important for us to let such public office holders know that it is not Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila that is summoning the CBN governor or Honorable Yusuf Gagdi or Deputy Speaker or any member. It is the collective wills of the Nigerian people that are inviting the CBN governor to come and explain.
Mr. Speaker, I want to concur with your submission, and on this particular matter, I want to appeal to members of the House. If you look at the context of the letter written out, as the Speaker has rightly said, the letter came out of here when the gentleman was out of the country. I would just want to appeal to the members of the House with the Speaker to go about giving a new date for the invitation to come back to the House to come explain to Nigerians what we are waiting to hear. So we don't just belabor ourselves with all that is on here.
The House had last week resolved in its plenary to invite the Apex Bank boss to shed more light on the cash withdrawal policy.
And ahead of the 2023 general elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has signed a memorandum of understanding with National Union of Road Transport Workers and Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria to mobilize the transport unions on the scale and dimension of transportation requirements for the 2023 elections. Noel Sampson reports.
There are about 170,000 polling booths in Nigeria's 36 states and 774 local government areas, which makes the distribution of materials and equipment very paramount. Hence, the involvement of transport unions, who will be shouldered with the responsibility of transportation of elections materials and personnel.
Over the years, the Commission has come to rely on the partnership with the NURTW and NATO to provide vehicles for the successful deployment of personnel and election materials. However, in view of the challenges we encountered in the riverine areas of the country, it has become necessary to include the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria, comprising sailors, dock workers, and those in related trades in our logistic planning and delivery. INEC is now in partnership with 3 unions, the National Union of Road Transport Workers and the National Association of Road Transport Owners for Land Transportation and the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria for the riverine areas.
Stakeholders who are involved in these logistics activities pledge their support to the Commission to help have a successful 2023 polls.
Everybody has spoken. What is important is commitment. Commitment, dedication to serve this great country. We are here on behalf of the union to say a very big thank to you, sirs, and to let you know that we are going to support this, our program, to make it as successful as everybody has spoken.
I therefore call on all the stakeholders to take this
As such, with high sense of responsibility, I want to appeal to all of us to put in our very best.
This MOU therefore commend all the stakeholder workers more closer towards achieving the above goals.
However, the Commission seized the opportunity to ask the leaders of these unions to appeal to the members to go get their PVCs to enable them vote during the elections. Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right. Now, presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, on Tuesday in Katsina says he will restore peace to the Northwest region if elected in the 2023 general election. Addressing a mammoth crowd during his presidential campaign rally, Atiku also promised to reopen the nation's borders. Now, we'll take details of that later, but for now, let's take a short breather, and then when we return, we'll take a look at the stories on the front pages of our newspapers. Join us again.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
That's great. All right. Good to see you.
Where you find that a person look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying with us. This is Daybreak on Trust Television. Time to take a look at the dailies on Daybreak. We have our guest reviewer, Ben Shema, the Director of News, Voice of Nigeria, with us in the studio. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, so beginning with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, the lead story talks about IPOP attacks. It says, Igbo avoid Christmas trips to Southeast. It has the riders that says, lull at motor parks, airports, as many remain in North Abuja, Lagos. Economic slowdown worsens apathy. You also have, we will dare the odds. Stay where you are. Relatives tell Kingsmen. You also have, beside the pictorial there, where the President Muhammadu Buhari and Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Professor Isa Ali Pantami, were seen during the commissioning of NAT Shared Services Center in Abuja. Now, beside that pictorial, there are stories there lined up. Zamfara airstrikes. Bandits seize residents as human shields. You'd find that on page 5. Jos Man jailed 2 years for destroying PDP's billboard on page 21. You also will find Hisbah storms same-sex marriage venue in Kano. Arrest 19. That's on page 20. After conviction, Okupe steps down as Obi's campaign DG. You also would find Race to Nas, Gombe North, Namkwambo, Alkali back for another boat. And that's on page 34. These are the major stories on the, well, not forgetting the stories above the lead story. You have also the FG to ban cash withdrawal from public accounts. Atiku vows to reopen borders, donates 50 million naira to victims of banditry in Katsina. And also we need 100,000 vehicles, 4,200 boats for 2023 polls, INEC chair says. So those are the stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, next we'll take a look at The Nation newspaper, and it carries this major headline on the front page. Tinubu unveils funding plan for infrastructure revolution. Now, that is the major story, and it comes with riders here. It says, it's possible to build in difficult times, and North Christian Forum endorses Tinubu Shetima. Cross River APC crisis resolved. And another headline on the front page, Governor's OK plan to sell off 5 power plants. And federal government eyes 260 billion naira from sale of Giregu, Ajaokuta, others. CBN releases security features of a new Naira notes is another story on the front page of the Nation newspaper. And right there at the bottom of the front page there, Senate confirms Onochie Ogumola 11 others for NDDC board. Moving towards the top of the front page there, above the masthead, Okugwe quits as Obi's campaign DG, LP candidate lists priorities. And Shema Camp, PDP leaders, shun Atiku's Katsina rally. Details of that can be found on page 8. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning.
All right, so let's take a look at the Punch newspaper this morning. The lead story there says, cash limits, reps order CBN to stay action. Banks adamant. That's on page 2. You'd also find the riders there. Lawmakers insist Emefiele must appear Thursday or send a deputy. House defense order to suspend policy, cites CBN Act and Constitution. Banks ready for implementation, no counter directive, spokespersons. You would also find above the masthead there, governors FG agree on NIPS sale to fund budgets. And also Buhari transmits finance bill, NAS passes budget Thursday. You'd find below the pictorial, Germany begins return of 1,130 looted Benin bronzes. And also below there, INEC needs 100,000 vehicles, 4,200 boats, says Yakubu. Truck driver kills tricycle rider, hoodlums loot rise. Also, NFIU stops cash withdrawal from federal government states account. These are the lead story, major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
Next, we'll take a look at the Guardian newspaper, and it comes with this major story on the front page. New Naira notes yet to circulate amid fear of counterfeiting. And it has riders here. It says redesign, withdrawal limit will wreck North, says Wamako claims. Ibadan motorcyclists reject new notes. And Bank of England unveils King Charles III banknotes. Won't phase out old notes, but reprinting will be discontinued. And moving on towards the bottom of the front page there, Okukpe steps down as campaign DG. Not demoralized, Peter Obi confirms. Details of that can be found on page 6. Ekweremadu to spend Christmas behind bars, and that is on page 2. Brace for flight delays, cancellations, airlines warn travelers, and details of that can be found on the business page of The Guardian. Towards the top of the front page there, below the masthead, FG to stop excess cash withdrawal from public accounts, says NFIU. That story is on page 3. Ondo Council workers threaten to boycott 2023 elections over autonomy, and details of that can be found on page 6. ACF mourns elder statesman Malemi, that is on page 29, and halt official sabotage of 2023 general elections, says Falano. That is on the political page, which is on page 25. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of The Guardian this morning.
All right, now talking about Al Jazeera, Nigeria, they have some of the stories there. The lead story talks about NDDC board controversy over Onoche's appointment. It has the writers that says court case subsists. NDDC Act must be respected. Senator Dixon says group vows to occupy region if Onoche is replaced. Then you have also some senators kick over appointment as lawmakers divided. You have other stories there below the masthead. FG earns $547 million from 5G spectrum auction, says Buhari. JAM fixes January 14 for commencement of 2023 UTME registration. U.S. plans $170 million African exports investment. Also, petrol, diesel, cooking gas prices jump. Christmas flights cancellation as airlines groan over aviation fuel scarcity. You also have 2023 police move against vote buyers. These are the major stories on the Al Jazeera, Nigeria this morning.
Now we'll take a look at the Leadership newspaper, and it carries this major story on the front page. NIPC snores as Nigeria loses more investment opportunities. And it comes with riders here that says Umar's actions ground commission to a halt, An executive secretary keeps mum over mounting allegations. Now, details of that can be found on page 4. There's a tribute to Shehu Malami, and it says Shehu Malami, a litany of tributes, juicy tales from Sarkin Sudan. And that is, we can find that on the Leadership newspaper. Newsbelt here has these headlines: Leadership Gulf Digest debuts and flight delays, cancellation loom over Jet A1 scarcity, and that is attributed to airlines. After conviction, Okukwe quits as Obi Detti campaign DG. Towards the top of the front page there, you'll find withdrawal limits. Lawmakers refuse to shift ground. Bajagbe Amila meets PMB. And 2023, FG counters no achievement claim by opposition. Details of that can be found on page 7. At the very top of the front page there, above the masthead, I'll reopen all borders to boost economy, says Atiku. And Tinubu intervenes in Cross River APC crisis. Details of that can be found on page 28. Now, these are the stories that are found on the front page of the Leadership newspaper.
All right, so let's get perspectives on some of these stories. We have Ben Sherman in the studio. Thank you again for joining us on Daybreak. Quite a number of stories. Let's begin with the issue of the CBN's policy on cash withdrawal. A lot of reactions coming from there. The Guardian newspaper leads with the story. It's put it this way. It says, new Naira notes yet to circulate amid fear of counterfeiting. You have the writer saying that the redesigned withdrawal limit will wreck North. Wamako claims Ibadan motorcyclists reject new notes. Bank of England unveils King Charles III banknotes. That's on the foreign side of it. But talking about us, locally here, are you surprised at the kind of reactions that you have seen trail this CBN's policy?
Thank God in Nigeria there is freedom of expression in excess, But when you say it's going to affect the north only, what about southeast? What about southwest? I can see some people are saying, well, the government is not printing, or CPN or Mint is not printing because of fear of bringing counterfeit notes. I mean, which one is being rejected then in the southwest? So a whole gamut of confusion here and there. But be as it may, I think that I still stand by the CBN and on their stand. Printing of these notes, limit as to how much one can withdraw. And of course, the politicians who are worried, and even the speaker, Bajabia Miller, going to see the president. Yes, he has the right to see him if he wants. And even the House of Reps are saying that they've passed a motion. Motions are not laws. And so they can as well express their opinions just like we, the ordinary ones, are expressing. But we are also saying that people should go on should win elections on the on platform of integrity, not how much you are doling out, how much you are dashing people.
Are we really sure that these cash withdrawal limits will actually curb the issue of vote buying? Because there are some speculations right now about certain parties being favored with the cash, making it available for them through the back channels.
But I tell you that even in APC, there are admirers of PDP. In PDP, there are admirers of APC. In Labour Party, there are admirers of this or that party. In the same vein, a situation where it is alleged that a certain party is more favored, some people somewhere will actually expose this thing because they may not like that favoritism being given to some other people. The freedom in Nigeria is enormous. Therefore, I think that when people have these fears that the campaigns may not go well in terms of money to be spent, what I fear more is when they say SSS is trying to arrest I mean, going to court to seek for permission, or the court should grant them the right to arrest Emefiele. At this critical moment, when INEC materials are with CBN, at this critical moment, when people are still talking about this monetary redesign policy and all that, that's when you now, I think it's like trying to throw spanners into a system that is already taking a shape within this how many days to election.
Does it really have anything to do with the, the new policy of the central bank? I mean, the issue of the
No, I doubt the talk at the point people said the terrorism sponsorship and some other kind of things like that, where the SSS they know better. But I think that within this period of time, if you therefore tamper with the CBN as it is, I think it will not say so much well in terms of election planning. Even the government, people will start suspecting the government and all that. And you look at the pressure being brought onto the CBN, which is also being brought onto the government. They now say, look, there is what you call behind the scene activities that we don't see. As it's always said, we don't know who is kicking who under the table. You just see faces. So I think they should allow Nigerians to have it so free. It's going to be good for everybody.
All right, talking about not knowing what lies beneath the surface, the House of Representatives has been adamant about the fact that the CBN governor must appear, he must explain this, he must explain that. I think a lot of people actually believe that a lot of information has actually been given out concerning this withdrawal limit and the cash redesign policy and the rest of it. From your own perspective, what is the House of Representatives hoping to gain from that encounter with the CBN governor that is not already in the public sphere?
Yeah, you see, the same House of Reps that said CBN governor must appear before them. The first instance, he has refused. Now they're saying tomorrow, Thursday, he has to be there. And they've given him a way out, or that he sends a deputy. I mean, okay, I can simply wake up and send my deputy, who has just been appointed, who just go there and play along. I'm not the main man and all that stuff. But talking seriously, when they say it's going to affect the rural man, they don't have banks, all this while the rural man has never had banks. How are they transacting business? So it's still going to be the same way. And Ibrahim, just a moment. When you are filling code of conduct form, which I usually feel, at the point they ask you instantly, cash at hand, how much do you have there? I mean, if I have 1,000 in my pocket, it says a lot about my spending pattern. But the man, so how much do you have in the bank? How much do you have in office? These are, I mean, it says a lot.
So perhaps the concern for rural dwellers is the limits, is the withdrawal cash limits, right?
How much does he withdraw? The rural man, how much does he withdraw? I mean,
there are some of them who do businesses in hundreds of thousands, in millions.
Sure, yes. But I want to tell you, those who do in hundreds of thousands or a million, as we are talking about, they are already passing what you call the real hawkers, the real guy who is running a salon, the real guy who has an eatery somewhere, So this, when you look at some people, the whole material, their commodity, their trade, the substance they're holding, you can assess it to be around 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. Some who move around with granules, they need to sell. They are traders too. They form part of the informal sector of the economy. So we cannot be pretending that we love those people so much that I want them to rather look at it. What about big institutions that employ hundreds of thousands? How do you take care of them so that the economy does not crash? So when you're talking about, I mean, it's like a man who indeed returns from loafing around. You enter the house, you perceive a smell of something being cooked. You begin to shout that the children will not like it. The children have been at home since this thing started, the cooking started. They never complain. You now come because you don't like it. So the National Assembly, in particular the House of Reps, I don't know what, I mean, well, inform them to keep on saying masses will suffer, masses will suffer. I don't know how the masses have been enjoying all this while.
I mean. Now, added to this is the issue of the federal government banning cash withdrawal from public accounts. And so that's from the NFRU. And what's your take on this? It seems like we've had the ideas to do all of these things, and which seem to be ideas that could help to deal with the issue of corruption, isn't it?
Yeah, you see, on appointment, that is what we call having the capacity, the courage, the ability, the even courage to do it. Do it according to the schedule of your job. Can you do it? First, Mr. President, you are wrong here. Can you go cut electricity in the villa because they have not paid? If you do that, good thing. So when we're talking of cash withdrawal, government, a new government policy, yes, the Financial Intelligence Unit is looking at Estacot in particular. When people are going abroad, the money being pumped goes far beyond the required and what somebody ought to have had by law. You see that it's more. And that's why they're saying, okay, instead of just doing those withdrawal, cash, hard currency, let there be what they call domiciliary accounts. Government now knows exactly, just like your salary, and they pay into that account. And that's why they want to say, okay, withdrawal from public.
So this is in line with the CBN policy.
Exactly. It's still an attempt to checkmate cash flows, inflow, outflow, so that you know. FIAU has always been working with the EFCC. In fact, it was a department under EFCC. Now they are independent. It's an international requirement. Just like we have this international group, they call them the Egmont Group. They ensure that they check money, terrorism spending, or when money laundering is being done here and there. So sometimes some people ferry money out using all this method. Now they want whatever belongs to Ayuba or Ibrahim or Ben Shaman, this is how it should be, and it should undergo due process. The auditors, the editors, everybody should always know this, so that I mean the auditors, they should always know exactly what has been appropriated for what purpose, who has approved, and all that. And instead of just having a blank check and people just withdraw money, and the accounts of the federation is being depleted just because of a few people. So these people, I mean, they've written the SGF. They've written the federal government, so to speak. They've written governors. They've written local government chairmen. Look, your personnel who indeed are always beneficiaries of Estacot, they need to have a domiciliary account so that government will know, or Nigerians will know, so that they're also kept in check. Because that's what is supposed to be KYC, know your customer by every bank. So that government too should know where money is being spent and for what purpose and to who.
All right, well, moving slightly away from that, but still talking about money being spent where it's supposed to go. The Nigeria power sector has been in sort of a roller coaster for the past couple of years. It was unbundled, it was sold, discos came on board, something happened that was revoked. Now they're in other people's hands. Now we're hearing that they're going to be sold again, and that I think the Punch newspaper carried a story about governors and the federal government agreeing to sell NIPP projects to be able to fund the budget to make more money. What do you make of that?
Well, NIPP, by my understanding, that's the Independent Power Project. If it is independent, so why are you selling an independent thing? Now, when it was unbundled, you also realize that the government is saying we're washing off this business, let the private sector take over. But government can always regulate. Fine. Now, the accusation then was, under PDP, many of the beneficiaries were members of PDP via insider trading. Now we have APC on ground. Are you now towing again the line of PDP that time? Was it a good policy that PDP did that you now want to also copy-paste in your own case? So I think that Nigeria has suffered for so long and too much under electricity. It's always like fetching water in a basket in Nigeria, or you fetch from a well and put it in a basket.
So you believe we're still going to be doing the same thing over again?
Honestly, except otherwise, you have men and women of integrity, of goodwill, who indeed will stand their grounds. We've had reasons to believe what some people say. State governments and people will say, we are generating this electricity. But it wastes away because people who are supposed to buy this light that we've generated send it via transmission to consumers. They say it costs them more to buy. And what do? They charge every consumer higher. And there is a law that even allows some regulatory agencies, when you reach some months, you are capable of reviewing. They are not talking of reviewing anything downwards. It's always upwards. When indeed the buying capacity, the money, people, spending power of Nigerians is just very, very low. So I think that we need to look at it seriously. Yeah. Look at the Mambila project. How long has that been? Close to 40 years. 40 years. Okay. I mean, when we have projects, we must have a time span. How long is this supposed to be? When is it going to be commissioned? We should also be having some stop gaps.
All right.
Let's be checking to see if we are going to commission this as at schedule.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at the lead story on the Daily Trust. It talks about Igbo avoid Christmas trips to Southeast. That's a story talking about the Yuletide season. A lot of people will be traveling to different parts of the country. You also have lull at motor parks, airports, as many remain in North Abuja, Lagos. Economic slowdown worsens apathy. Kinsmen are advising their relatives to stay where they are. What will be your take on this? I mean, given the fact that this is a season that for many people is almost like a tradition. If they don't travel during the Yuletide season, it's almost as if the year has not started. So,
yeah. You see, if I were to be the editor to cast this headline, instead of saying Igbos, I would say Nigerians. Because it's not just Igbo land that is under attack. As we are talking, what happened in Zamfara yesterday and day before yesterday? How many people from Zamfara will wish to go home that period? When you are going holidaying, you're going relaxing. You're going visiting. You're going to see your people. Areas, to even see some of your projects.
But for the Igbos, traveling for Christmas is a tradition that they cannot almost like do without.
Honestly, not just
it's
Igbos.
A yearly thing.
People from Benue do same. People Plateau do same. People from Southern Kaduna do same. As we are talking, were there no but 30 people or 40 people killed around in Kaura local government in Southern Kaduna just the day before yesterday? And tell me how people would just willingly say, I'm going home to do my usual holiday. And recall that like areas in Southern Kaduna, almost every community, right from now up to Easter period, you find every village doing this ceremony. We have our own peculiar day, that peculiar festival, that fiesta here and there. So when attacks of this nature are all over the place, you find out that people will not travel. And of course, when you go into, I hope their statistics are okay. Going to the motor parks, did you ask, okay, where are the vehicles going to the east? You can't find them. Where are the people going to the east? See vehicles, but you can't see passengers, or both. Then you compare that with also those going to the southwest. Compare that with those going to Chibok areas. Compare that to those going to Daura and all that. You see that it's a thing that is. Do I say omnibus? It's all over the place. Yeah. So I think that it's like profiling.
What exactly is it about this traveling that people have to travel almost every festive period? Every Yuletide, and there are certain things that just don't change, with periods like this, the Yuletide season. The cost of things will, most probably go high during the same period. The cost of transportation will definitely go high. And then you see this mass exodus of people, almost as if they cannot do without it. What is it, that you think draw people?
Yes, you see, what draws people? When the white man or the Europeans feel that they've worked so much, let me go holidaying, let me go vacation. They go Gambia, they go to Thailand, they go to some other areas, Bali. In our own case, many people wait till end of year. They make the money, let me now go home and stay with my people. Let me now go home and complete my house. Let me now go home and relax. And so, if all the while you've been, I'm sorry to use the word, sufferhead, struggling here and there, let me just go home. Some will now say,
is there no any other time of the year that you could travel, that it has to be end of the year?
Yeah, you see, if it is the wet season, you are busy farming. If it is, Easter period, you realize that many people are also not too much going through for Easter break. Is it the Salah? There are times, yes, people will need to go home. But you realize that this end of year thing is really not about the Christians. End of year, some people feel, I have not gone home this year. Let me go December. And that's why you see mass exodus and the villages become so filled up. And you realize, yes, handshakes here and there, weddings here and there. I think it should be encouraged. The rural dwellers also witnessed what they call their own economic boom. Gifts here and there. It should be encouraged. Rather than that same situation will come, it is then some communities are selected for attacks so that this harmonious relationship is destroyed. It shouldn't just be.
So you just brought up a very good point. You brought up a very good point there. Now, you're talking about the economy of these places. Less visitors mean less transactions are going to happen, less influx of cash coming in from other places. How deeply affected will these people be? Apart from having the insecurity challenges.
Yeah, you see, if you don't positive, if the people are there, because this thing. I tell you, Ibrahim, if for a whole year you've not been home and you are now going home to spend 2 weeks, chances are that you go there with some rappers. You go there, okay, Maggie is short. Okay, we've not taken meat for a long time in this place. Oh, Uncle Ibrahim is around. Things will change a bit for that momentarily. Someone will come whisper, well, we've not been able to settle into. And at that point, your integrity is at stake. Yeah, you need to. This is Africa, extended family. Those you don't know. And because you are in daily trust, you say, oh, we see him on TV. He's a star. He interviews ministers. He does this, he does that. So at the point, you feel, let me help. So it is that, that connection. But again, when you look at it, why is it that we are so religious and we begin to kill on behalf of God Almighty? But when it comes to humanity during festivals, religious festivals, Easter, Christmas, Salah, just name it, prices of goods will just go up there. You want to maximize profit because it is religious affair. We ought to see that prices will nosedive because there is love for neighbor. And when they say, in the Islamic way, they say, who is your neighbor? You count how many left. You count how many right. If you can count those numbers to the left and to your right, and another person is counting that way, then everyone is your neighbor. In the Christendom, when they say who is your neighbor, see, everyone around you. So if everyone around me, like you are all my people around here, All the people around me are in Abuja here are my neighbors, and they are also counting me as their own neighbors. You realize that there is humanity in us. But when there is religious festival and you now want to cash in, it's like what the idiomatic of the white man will say. Fishing in troubled waters. It's when some people have misfortunes that you now cash into it and make money.
But is
Smile
it
to the bank.
not the natural market forces that is leading to these hikes? I mean, when you have more, demand, then you are likely going to have shortfall in supply.
I've witnessed Christmas period in some European countries. In Germany, in Cologne, before that period comes, see, it's almost like hawking. Prices of goods will just crash, just like that, because it's Christmas. You see them in streets.
So this is
at a
peculiar to
giveaway.
Nigeria? Is that
What
what
the
you're
hustle man will say, Gonjo.
So this is peculiar to Nigeria?
It's peculiar to Nigeria, peculiar to Africa. We are overdoing things in a very negative way. Once it is a religious thing, I mean, are we saying that in Saudi, no matter the massive influx of people there to do their religious obligation, the prices of things would now skyrocket? I mean, Ibrahim, I don't know whether you've gone there. Do they change? So it's a peculiar thing to Nigeria. We should seek for forgiveness from God Almighty.
All right, that's arguable anyways. But let's leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak and sharing with us your perspectives. Perhaps this is the last day we'll see you before the Christmas season. So let's just say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in advance.
Thank you very much. And we also hope that we smile on the tables. We also hope that religious leaders, Christians, Muslims, please invite imams. Let them see them with turbans in your house, pastor's house. Christians, when it is Salah, move on to imams' houses. Let followers follow this kind of a thing. That is what religion is all about.
All right. Thank you so much. Our guest reviewer, Ben Shema, the director of news, Voice of Nigeria, with us here in the studio talking about some of the stories on the front pages of our newspapers. We look forward to having you again.
My pleasure.
We'll take a short break now, and then when we return, the Daybreak show continues. Join us again.
But in a situation where you find that a look at this,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
It is 8 a.m., top of the hour. This is Daybreak on Trust TV. Welcoming you back. I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Welcome to the show.
I'm Ayuba Ilya. Thank you for staying with us. For those who are just joining us, we are talking about some of the major issues in the news this morning, and the headlines goes this way. Now, Kogi police warn violent politicians move against thugs.
And Doyin Okupe resigns as Peter Obi's presidential campaign DG.
FG to stop cash withdrawal from public accounts.
Now, the details. Now, against the backdrop of increasing political violence in Kogi State, the AIG Zone 8, Asafa Adekunle, has vowed to deal decisively with politicians who refuse to play the game by its rules, particularly those going around tearing posters and destroying the billboards of their opponents. The AIG disclosed this during a meeting of his command on Tuesday at the State Police Headquarters, Lokoja. In attendance at the meeting were also politicians, leaders of political parties, civil society organizations, religious bodies, among others. And he told the politicians to rethink and stay off the violent approach as a means to achieve their ambition in the forthcoming election in Kogi, stressing that the era of violence, thuggery, ballot snatching, and other vices during election is over. The AIG added that the Zone 8 Command has resolved to be impartial, ready and professional in their approach before, during and after the forthcoming election.
The Director General of the Labour Party Campaign Council, Doyin Okupe, has resigned his position. The announcement was contained in a letter he addressed to the LP presidential candidate Peter Obi on Tuesday. Okupe's resignation followed his conviction for breaching the Money Laundering Act by a federal high court sitting in Abuja on Monday. The Labour Party chieftain, who was formerly a member of the People's Democratic Party, was subsequently sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. However, the presiding judge, Justice Ijoma Ojukwu, gave Okupe an option of 500,000 naira each on each of the 26 count charges, totaling 13 million naira, for which he was found guilty.
And the federal government says it is putting measures in place to stop cash withdrawal from the federal, states and local government accounts. The Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, Modib Muhammad Tukur, revealed this on Tuesday at a parley with the Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Tukur further stated that most cash withdrawals from government accounts, including payments, were often in excess of the cash withdrawal limit provided by the Money Laundering Act. He said this exposed innocent public servants to being liable to imprisonment. He further said governors and the local government council chairman will need to organize trainings for market men and women on how to use ATM and POS services.
All right, now let's take a look at some of the packages this morning. Nigeria's government on Tuesday received 22 bronzes stolen from the Benin Kingdom by the colonial administrators over a century ago, just as it tasked Britain and other countries holding on to such cultural assets to take a cue and return them where they belong. Trust TV's Shafiu Suleiman reports that the returned artifacts were officially handed over to the Nigerian government in line with signed agreements between the two countries.
It was a solemn and emotional event for both countries as 22 of the repatriated artifacts originally belonging to the Benin Kingdom returned home. It was a result of years of negotiations between the two countries anchored on sustained mutual relationship and trust.
I want to thank the federal government of Germany and its officials for these unprecedented moves that culminated in this event. In particular, I want to thank the heads of government and governments of the various German regions and their officials, I want to announce that Nigeria is not only seeking the return of Benin bronzes, but all Nigerian antiquities that were illegally or illicitly exported.
It belongs to us, and it's rightfully ours, and should be where where it belongs, which is here. But nevertheless, we will share it with the world, because for us it is a common human asset.
To the German government, in whose custody the stolen artifacts were kept for over 100 years, it's time to right the wrong and return the treasures to where they belong.
What would it mean to us to be deprived of our cultural heritage? Not to be able to marvel the Gutenberg Bible in Mainz, to be unable to admire Martin Luther's writings, to stand in front of a sculpture by Käthe Kollwitz in Berlin, or at Goethe's desk in Weimar. It evokes a sense of loss that I can hardly imagine. To you here in Nigeria, however, this loss has been your reality for your whole life. Today, we are here to return the Benin bronzes to where they belong.
This historic moment that brings together not only our two countries, but also our two continents, Europe and Africa, marks the start of something new. A different way of coming together that is grounded in mutual respect and interest in one another, and is driven by the desire to learn from each other.
And for Nigeria and Benin Kingdom, which the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says is on its way to becoming West Africa's cultural hub, it is a dream come true as they reunite with their cultural heritage and identity. Shapir Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Now to legislative matters, where the House of Representatives has again rescheduled Thursday this week for the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, to appear before it. The decision by the House during plenary on Tuesday came after the Speaker, Femi Gbajagbiamila, read a letter from the CBN Governor requesting that a rescheduled date be given to him to appear because he is out of the country on official assignment. The report.
Reacting further to the letter, the Speaker stated that if Emefiele is still not back from his travel, his deputy can represent him to explain the controversial cash withdrawal policy.
I would like to know what that official assignment at this critical point in Nigeria that will keep him away for 2 weeks. So in my humble opinion, I think because this House will also more than likely close on Thursday for the Christmas break, I think we should resolve to invite the CBN governor to brief this House on Thursday morning. And if for any reason it is verified that he is unavoidably out of the country on Thursday, that he asks his deputy governor or anyone who is well equipped to fully brief this House so that we do not carry this thing onto next year.
Members frowned at Emefiele's non-appearance, noting that it is disrespectful to the Nigerian public and not only to the House.
The crafters of the Nigerian Constitution, Mr. Speaker, did not make error to create House of Representatives to call for public office holders to account for their activities on behalf of Nigerians. I think at this point in time it is quite important for us to let such public office holders know that it is not Right Honorable Femi Gbajagbiamila that is summoning the CBN governor or Honorable Yusuf Gagdi or Deputy Speaker or any member. It is the collective wills of the Nigerian people that are inviting the CBN governor to come and explain.
Mr. Speaker, I want to concur with your submission, And on this particular matter, I want to appeal to members of the House. If you look at the context of the letter written out, as the Speaker has rightly said, the letter came out of here when the gentleman was out of the country. I would just want to appeal to the members of the House with the Speaker to go about giving a new date for the invitation to come back to the House to come explain to Nigerians what we are waiting to hear. So we don't just belabor ourselves with all that is on here.
The House had last week resolved in its plenary to invite the Apex Bank boss to shed more light on the cash withdrawal policy.
All right, thank you for that report. Now, as the state and federal government hospitals are struggling to attend to the health challenges of millions of Nigerians with few medical doctors, the NMA is calling for the protection and employment of more medical personnel to lighten the burden on the system. The call was made as part of resolutions reached at the end of the National Executive Council meeting of the association in Asaba. The report.
The national president, Dr. Uche, speaking after the meeting, said government should protect doctors by providing conducive work environment, which is crucial to physicians. He also called on the government to urgently employ more doctors to replace those that have abandoned their work for greener pastures to avoid over-laboring the remaining doctors. The association condemned the kidnap of doctors in the country, citing the case of Dr. Gidam, who was kidnapped in Borno State while on duty.
The neck of NMA seriously condemned the progressive kidnapping of doctors across this country. It has become a national pastime to relay the news of a doctor kidnapped almost every day and every week. We call on our government to humbly understand that from us, we have to also protect ourselves. If we are not protected, nobody should blame us for doing whatever we can within the limits of the law to protect ourselves. We use this opportunity to call especially on the government of Borno State to redouble the effort to secure the release of Dr. Alhaji Bulama Gidam, who was kidnapped on the 15th of March, 2022 in Damasak. He has stayed long enough in captivity. Let them also employ more people, because as doctors are leaving, the little that are left now have excess workload and they get into burnout. NEC wish to thank the federal government and some state governments like the government of Delta State for paying the new hazard allowance, and call on the federal government to pay to our colleagues that are lecturers in basic medical faculties in our universities, because a doctor is a doctor.
Now, ahead of the 2023 general elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has signed a memorandum of understanding with the National Union of Road Transport Workers and Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria to mobilize the transport unions on the scale and dimension of the transportation requirements for the 2023 general elections. Noel Sampson reports.
There are about 170,000 polling booths in Nigeria's 36 states and 774 local government areas, which makes the distribution of materials and equipment very paramount. Hence, the involvement of transport unions, who will be shouldered with the responsibility of transportation of elections materials and personnel.
Over the years, the Commission has come to rely on the partnership with the NURTW and NATO to provide vehicles for the successful deployment of personnel and election materials. However, in view of the challenges we encountered in the riverine areas of the country, it has become necessary to include the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria, comprising sailors, dock workers, and those in related trades in our logistic planning and delivery. INEC is now in partnership with 3 unions, the National Union of Road Transport Workers and the National Association of Road Transport Owners for Land Transportation and the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria for the riverine areas.
stakeholders who are involved in these logistics activities pledged their support to the Commission to help have a successful 2023 polls.
Everybody has spoken. What is important is commitment. Commitment, dedication to serve this great country. We are here on behalf of the union to say a very big thank to you, sirs, and to let you know that we are going to support our program to make it as successful as everybody has spoken.
I therefore call on all the stakeholders to take this as such with high sense of responsibility. I want to appeal to all of us to put in our very best.
This MOU therefore commend all the stakeholder workers more closer towards achieving the above goals.
However, the Commission seized the opportunity to ask the leaders of these unions to appeal to the members to go get their PVCs to enable them vote during the elections. Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, thank you, Noel Samson, for that report. We'll take a short break, and then when we return, Daybreak continues. Join us again. Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130...
a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Really, if you look at English squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
That's great. Good to see you. All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from the nation's capital in Abuja. Now, taking a look at the next discussion on the program, as we approach the 2023 presidential election, it is expedient and informative to identify the key factors that will determine who gets the majority of the electorate votes and so becomes elected. The majority choice will invariably be seen as the will and choice of God. Now, we are going to be talking about the deciding factors in the 2023 election, and we have in the studio a politician, Mrs. Dorothy Nuhu Akenova. She's a former presidential candidate. Thank you so much for joining us on
Thank
Daybreak.
you very much.
We also have from our Kano studio joining us virtually the Executive Director of Organization for Community Civil Engagement, Abdulrazak Al-Khali. He'll be also giving us perspectives on this issue this morning. Well, let me start with you, Mrs. Dorothy, here with us in the studio. Let me start with the CBN policy and perhaps get your take on it, on how it's going to affect our 2023 election from where you stand. How do you see this? There are a lot of civil society groups and others who believe that it will help curb the issue of vote buying. What's your own take?
Well, we know that it will help. However, we need to remember that vote buying is usually done by stashing away some resources, usually in foreign currency. And it is important for us to begin to address how the central bank intends to deal with that kind of practice, where people have stashed money in foreign currency and can eventually do an exchange, to settle voters. Yes, it's a right decision, right policy. It's going to help, but bearing in mind that foreign currency does play a big role during elections, makes me wonder how effective.
Well, how much of foreign currency would you need to be able to actually buy the kind of votes that we are looking at here? It means that you will have in millions of dollars, isn't it?
Well, we see those on social media, how people are stashing USD. At a point, I've asked myself, how much US dollar cash is there in America itself? Because it does seem like in Nigeria, practically every transaction is done in dollar. And then people keep the foreign currency in their homes, in their offices. Some people keep it and they say it's for emergency and things like that. It is a known fact that politicians keep foreign currency.
What we are looking at here is that the chances of the vote buying moving from the use of naira to the use of dollars now.
It's a possibility.
That's even more difficult because I'm just imagining the pressure that will put on Forex, which we're already
experiencing. It's very crunching, that is true. And in the place where I sit, I have not divorced the experience completely from what is going on right now in terms of Forex and foreign exchange. And please remember, sometimes it doesn't even take cash. It's just some rice, some Indomie, some salt, a wrapper, to swing people's mindset concerning who to vote for. And we saw that playing out even during the primaries when people were giving televisions and motorbikes and things like that, of course, in addition to cash. So sometimes it's not cash, sometimes it is also in kind. And if people have, storehouses and everything, then of course we know that the rural communities are again going to be plagued with this menace.
So it's not Uhuru yet, I believe.
Well, Zach, let me come to you now. Still staying on the same issue. How much do you think money, or for how much of a role do you think money is going to play in the outcome of the 2023 general elections? And are you of the opinion that the current CBN policy of the withdrawal limit will actually put paid to those who have the mindset to actually use money to be able to sway people's opinion?
Well, thank you for having me. Actually, I doubt much
to role of handling the issue of vote buying in Nigerian election. Because now the vote buying is a much a smarter way. People are getting their endorsement at home when they vote for the candidate. They have discussed. They take. They snap. They snap their voter card and then send it at times through WhatsApp, or they meet the people who are intermediaries for these people who buy into election and collect their money. So it's not all the time that money are bringing into the polling space buying. So there are many ways in which they can outsmart the navigate the process and do their but the only thing, the thing that is giving me much confidence is that with the recent improvement in terms of the electoral process, I think now it's going to be much difficult for vote buying to take place as it happens before, because of the way the accreditation of the voters is taking place. It's not business. So I believe even without the CBN cash policy, the vote buying and other rigging activities is going to be minimized in this 2023 election.
All right. Well, quite a lot of issues, really. Another issue of concern as we approach the election is the issue of safety and security. A lot of concerns, really, going by the campaigns, going by utterances, even verbal attacks from social media, on mainstream media, and all of that. Are we laying the grounds for a peaceful election? Yes, we've seen that peace pacts have been signed, but I don't know, how much will that do, really, Mrs. Doris?
I think peace pact usually seen as, binding on the candidates. The candidates do the little they can by telling the electorate to behave itself. I overheard yesterday a community of women politicians who were telling themselves, please don't get provoked. Just make sure you go do your campaign, canvass for votes. Don't get provoked. Those kind of statements are not coming very powerfully this time. 2019, I think we did more about non-aggressive, attitude towards election period. And there were stars, musicians who came together and they ran a very big campaign on zero tolerance to violence during elections. I'm not seeing that this time around. I think their energies are diverted to mobilization to make sure that youth are included. They are fighting more for inclusivity, for visibility, for voice. That is what is occupying them right now. So I believe that with this program today, maybe some attention will be drawn into the champions of the cause to make sure that violence is also, brought up so that people begin to think towards it and plan towards resisting acts of violence. The peace pact is good, but then the electorate needs to be conscientized a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Madam Razak, let me come to you now, and let's talk about violence, but on a different scale. Usually, when it comes to elections, we're talking about electoral violence, violence during elections, in polling units, during campaigns, and the rest of it. Right now, we have sort of a larger problem, insecurity in general, and there's a very palpable fear that elections might not be able to realistically be held in certain areas, in certain parts of the country. How far do you think this will affect the general, or should I say, the final tally and the final results when it comes to election day?
Well, actually, even though the level of violence and insecurity has gone down a bit, but we still have concern in some areas, more especially in the northwest part, if you look of Zamfara and some part of Sokoto State and even Kaduna State. There are still some areas that the security apparatus not completely So they have to, in those areas, make sure they have done the right mobilization for personnel to give people chance to come out and vote on election day. But notwithstanding, I believe Nigerian security are also very aware that this issue of violence might occur on election day. And there are a number of places where this violence can take place, and they have to be well strategic to make sure that this has not happened, more especially in the southeast. If you can see the level of violence perpetrated against, INEC materials, non-sensitive materials is very alarming. They have to do all that they election to make sure that have replenished those materials and make sure they have provided adequate security. If then those people in the area are going to be, denied their right to participate in the election, which is not going to go well. The general election come 2020.
Yeah, and I think that on the way to the election, we are already beginning to see some acts of violence, like he has mentioned. Some offices, INEC offices, are getting burnt. We had a woman leader for Labour Party in Kaduna who was murdered. We had also a House of Reps person who was murdered. I think that we need to address even the journey towards the elections so that issues of violence can be tracked and addressed. It doesn't make sense for people who are active to be targeted and be eliminated. It creates fear, it creates panic, and it makes people wonder if all of this is worth it at all, especially if it's taken so many weeks, we've not seen any arrests, we've not seen any sense of prosecution. So how do the rest feel, especially as campaigns are beginning to reach the crescendo? We need to ensure that issues of violence are tackled.
And this is coming at a time when the president has said repeatedly how he's committed to handing over how he's committed to conducting a peaceful, free and fair election as a lasting legacy that he will want to leave. He has said that at the global stage, at the UN General Assembly, AU meetings, almost he doesn't miss an opportunity to say that each time he travels. But I'm wondering how that translates into other chieftains or other members of his party, given the fact that some of the attacks that we've seen actually took place in states where APC is the ruling party in those states, in Kaduna, in Borno, and like that. So do you see that where the leadership is able to translate whatever position it has on having a peaceful election to its followership, to its followers, and how best can we actually translate that?
Well, Mr. President has done well. He continues to reiterate, and it is left for us, to absorb what he has said and to put it into practice. And that is where I think many Nigerians get it wrong. Sometimes we think if the head is correct, then the rest is automatic. It is not so, because we have to take a cue and we have to begin to put into practice the things that the leadership wants us to do. That these things have happened in APC states, it's worrisome. And it is good for us to see investigations so that it's not a good indication for the party that these things are happening in the state where they are leading. It is important to dispel if it is not true that they are behind these activities, because it doesn't all go well for any political party to have this kind of label associated with them.
In terms of positioning the police, to be able to, because the police is the security agency directly involved with matters of election. So sometimes we see that their appearance during electioneering periods does not necessarily mean that there will be a free, fair election. I mean, you would expect that when you have the presence of police, then everything should be fine, but that's not necessarily the case in sometimes. They have constantly been charged to be apolitical and the rest of them.
Oui.
But, do we have measures to deal with those who, decided that I'm going to take advantage of this moment and, you know, get whatever I can get, you know, and all of that?
I think that is a systemic problem, and we can't isolate and deal with these things, you know, in silos. We need to look at the interconnectedness of the entire poverty, corruption structure in the country. For as long as people are hungry, for as long as, you know, corruption continues to be pampered, we are going to continue to see these things happen. We've never seen instances where, you know, police people were called to book to say, look, you compromised at a polling unit, or where you were kept to keep charge. You know, we've not seen that in the past. And it is important for us to begin to call to book those people who compromise, who take sides. You know, in the Ekiti elections, for example, I was privileged to have been around. There were video clips where the money that was used for vote buying was in fact kept, you know, with the police people. These things are very unholy. We shouldn't be doing those things if we want a free and fair election.
Let's talk about, still talking about the issue of vote buying now and how it has prevailed in our society. You are a champion when it comes to civic engagement and all that. And there's always a need that we say we need to sensitize people on the need to do that, not to sell their mandate and the rest of it. But how tough a job do you have in this kind of situation when it comes to this kind of engagement, when someone simply replies you with, I am hungry, that is why I'm doing this?
Well, it is quite challenging. Over the years, we have been working in terms of providing civic and voter education, making sure citizens are well engaged in the political process, to appreciate what democracy can offer for them, to have good governance, to have improved service delivery. But over the time, we were disappointed, more especially with politicians, who are the main beneficiary of the democratic process. They are the one being elected into office, and they are managing our resources, and their actions really disappointed the electorates. And we even find it difficult to continue to educate people in where they are not reaping the benefit of what they are doing. And it is quite challenging, especially with this level of poverty, the rising inflation, the rising insecurity. And you find it challenging to continue to educate people about their civic duties and responsibilities, which vote buying is part of it. People that are hungry, that if they elect this person, if he goes, they will never see him until 4 years later. And these are the kind of challenges we are facing. And but notwithstanding, it's not the solution for people to take money, just peanuts amount of money, and then render their vote to useless people. They have to take their ground, make sure and they didn't fight their own needs. They change them over a period of time. There are provisions for what we call recall. People can do that even if to allow the person to continue to mess with their resources and with their representation. So there are us taking the money, and we have been looking for INEC to start prosecuting people who are doing vote buying, even the EFCC, and we have seen that in the recent National Convention of Political Parties. EFCC operatives were everywhere in the Eagle Square, trying to get money. They cannot get money in that field. The money are not being shared in the field. There are ways in which politicians shed money. So they have to open their eyes and make the operation a successful one to deter people from using money in politics.
All right, let's talk about the capacity of INEC here. Sometimes it appears as if INEC is overwhelmed, especially when you look at some of the attacks on INEC offices in recent times, and maybe the legal framework within which they have to operate. There are those who have called for the issue of the electoral offences commission to be set up, which there's a legislation to that effect that hasn't pulled through yet from the National Assembly. So do you think that perhaps doing that will help, and why have we seen that there's a lag in that regard?
Like you said, they appear to be overwhelmed. That is true. And if that bill passes into act, it is possible that a lot of people will get trained, and we may begin to see some kind of security training even in that aspect, so that they are better positioned to deal with the attacks that they are prone to. But I believe also that we leave too much to last minute. And that is why we are overwhelmed. Why are we doing voters' education now? Why are we preaching no violence towards election now? Why are we educating against vote selling, vote buying now? Why didn't we do it as a continuous process from the last election, so that by now we have gained some ground and we have appealed to some consciousness of the people? So I think also leaving things to dying minute is responsible for this monster that we are seeing. It's very overwhelming because Nigeria is big and the diversity is huge, and our problems and challenges are multifaceted. And honestly speaking, until we are able to connect these dots and build linkages between the problems and also the solutions, we will continue to be overwhelmed by once one erupts, then we appear to just have no answer or response to what is happening.
I mean, just yesterday we had a report that is saying that INEC signed an MOU with transporters to move you know, election materials and all of that. And the INEC chair is saying that INEC needs 100,000 vehicles, 4,200 boats for the polls. That's massive. And if I recall the experience in the Southeast, I think it was during Anambra election, where the road transport workers at the last minute, there was some of them pulled out, you know, from the agreement to move some of the materials and all that. So when you look at some of those challenges, yes, you have an MOU now, but what happens if, you know, some of the transporters decide at the last minute to pull out of?
And then we have the same crisis we had 2019, you know, including the fact that at some point some materials were taken to wrong places and so on and so forth. You know, it just shows how weak our democracy, generally speaking, is. Because I'm not saying we can't have challenges, but to have a situation where materials are not arriving on time, they're arriving in wrong places, people are pulling out at dying minute. You know, this is a patriotic service that we are rendering. It's not only the remuneration we should be looking at when we are doing things like that. And that is where the transport union needs to embark on sensitizing and educating and training those who will be involved in moving the materials. They need to know that this is a service they are rendering the nation, and that they cannot afford to pull out of it, especially now that everybody is pegging 2023 as a defining factor for the continuous existence of the country. We can't joke with this election. We have to get it right. And the Transporters Union need to really sit up and make sure that everyone who is going to be involved is sensitized, becomes die-hard patriotic, so that come what may, even if they are not paid, let them see it as their contribution to save this country and to give us a brighter future.
I wonder if we have those kind of patriotic Nigerians in Nigeria today. But let me throw that to Abdulrazak. Does INEC really have options when it comes to some of these logistical arrangements, really?
INEC needs to its own logistic strategy, not only relying on this kind of unions that sometimes they are not reliable. Sometimes even politics play into their decision how to go about things. So INEC need to start, you know, having their own structure in place. The logistic, they can engage a number of private you know, entities who can provide the same transport the union. And through that, I think they can even have much accountability in place to check the excesses of this kind of people who are the materials. I think this is not the first time they are having with this kind of arrangement. So they need to start looking inward to have their own arrangement and get practices who can deliver these services effectively, and where we can have an accountability mechanism where they find wanting, then they can be taken to, they can kind of arrangement that at times it's giving us headache.
All right, now you made a very valid point when you were responding to the last question on how pivotal the election actually is, and you made a statement that we need to get it right.
Yes.
A lot of people actually believe that 2023 is a game changer, and all that. So we've seen the choices that we have. All of them are running around trying to make sure that they put their best foot forward and show us their best garment and see if we can actually do that. What should Nigerians actually be looking for in someone that we believe will be able to possess that silver bullet to bring the kind of development or the kind of transformation that we desire at this moment? What are the things that we should look out for?
I think that we must pay attention to, first of all, the personality. We need to make sure that that kind of personality is not divisive, but that is someone who has the skills for consensus building. It is someone who has experience to work with diverse stakeholders at the same time. It's someone who has experience in working in challenging contexts. That is very paramount. We must look at someone who is driven by the issues, because we want to feel the pulse. If you look at the way voters registration has happened, you can, close gaze what the issues are that are of key concern to the populations that have the highest number of votes. You can look at the Northwest and look at the Southwest and look at the youth. Those are the majority new voters that we have. And I think people with disabilities also, because of the awareness that's been created there. So you can look at the motive behind these high numbers of registration and begin to package, the issues of concern to these populations and address them. Because if the leadership or the candidates are divorced from the issues that are pertinent to the majority of the voters, especially the new registered ones who are going to create the swing, like it or not, then we would have missed it again. So we look at the young people. We're going to be looking at issues of globalization and how competitive things have become and how to help them to have an edge so that they can compete globally. We also need to look at education, because staying at home for all those months didn't all go well to the young people at all. Already they are wondering, when I graduate, what job can I get? And now to graduate takes 4 years of waiting in the final year. That's not a good way to run things,
in your assessment, how have Nigerians engaged these candidates so far in their outings? And yes, we've had several town hall meetings and the rest. What's your assessment of the kind of engagement?
I think the parties and the candidates have been in charge and not the people, because they set out their agenda, they set out their timetable, and then people go and sit down, like they are in control. Why not we organize and give them those invitations and say, hey, Diko community would want to engage with so-and-so. Please come and talk to us. And around our community and districts, we can invite other communities, let's get it to the grassroots proper. All the town halls, it's so sophisticated. I've been looking at Chida Hotel and other big spaces where they've been using, and I've not seen the core grassroots people there. Because they are in charge. They choose the comfort zones where they go.
It looks more elitist right now.
Exactly. And we know that that is part of Nigeria's problem, the elite.
All right, so Abdulrazak, while speaking on this now, in your own opinion, from your own perspective where you're sitting right now, do you think the current engagement, just like she was pointed out, is the right platform? Do we have the right platforms to actually engage these candidates to find out exactly what they mean for us? Do you think these current engagements are grassroots enough? Do they really bring them face to face with the people that they want to lead?
Well, for me, I think it matters at times that face-to-face engagement, but the most important, there are a number of factors that can really determine the outcome of the 2023. First, we have to look at the incumbent governors. The incumbent governors, any party with incumbent governors, they stand a better chance of winning the election in Nigeria, historically, because they are in control of enormous resources, and even sometimes the security that do manage the elections, they are providing counterpart resources to those security. So they have that advantage. And then you also have to look at the political parties. The political parties membership, regardless, some political members of the political parties will always go and vote for their party, regardless of who is in top. They can go to the extent of voting their political party because of some interest they do protect. Then you also have to look at the outreach of the political parties. A political party that have larger outreach, where they don't get candidates across Nigeria, they stand a better chance also of election. Because we have state assembly, we have national assembly, we have senators, governors. All these people mobilize resources and engage with the people to make sure that they do appreciate what their party is offering. So these are the kinds of determinant factors that really decide who the party manifesto, and is more of these, things. The normal regular Nigerians, they don't go into that the party manifesto or candidate manifesto. They always, align themselves for 2 or 3 reasons. They look at religion, they look at the ethnic political factors that we have to look at. Any can into this and have advantage over the others may likely come out victorious, and but it's an election, we never know. But these are the critical factors that we have to watch, and they are going to determine how people behave regardless of their engagement. Because some people, sometimes the candidates are not what people are looking at.
Okay, finally.
That's the major problem.
All right. So finally, just as a way of rounding up these discussions, most times when we talk about engaging with candidates, the emphasis mostly is candidates at the national level, mostly the president, specifically. But we talk less of candidates at the sub-national level. How can we better engage candidates vying for seats at that local level, the governorship and the state assemblies?
It's the mindset. We need to deconstruct the hierarchy that we have in our mind, because the hierarchy we have in our mind is bottom to top approach, top to bottom approach. And once we continue to think top to bottom approach and live lifestyles of top to bottom approach, then we are likely to keep our eyes on the top and not mind what happens, at the other level of the structure. But it's very important, especially when we are hungry for decentralization, devolution of power, and things like that. We need to begin to reset our thinking to say that if we want that decentralization, then we need to hold accountable, especially those around us who have the mantle of leadership, and then those next to them. Because Abuja is so far away from the community where I live. So I'd rather engage with my council and local government chairperson. But there has to be a conscious effort of re-educating Nigerians to reverse the hierarchy. Otherwise,
All right, Abdulrazak, I'll throw the same question to you. How can we better hold accountable leaders or candidates, politicians at the subnational level?
Well, I think, as you said, Nigerians have to open their eyes and look at issues all the time that politicians will drive the process as how to go about, voting. We have to be on our candidates are offering and to look at that hierarchy from top to bottom, because the dividends of democracy is not always coming from the top. People have their own representative from their own constituencies to deliver for them. So people have to start taking the pull to fight right from to the subnational and national. That's the only way we can have the kind of system that is going to work for all and make Nigeria a better place.
All right. All right, well, thank you so much. Would have to end the discussions at this point. We thank you for joining us on the program, Mrs. Dorothy Nuhu Akenova, and also she's a politician and former presidential candidate, as well as the executive director of the Organization for Community Civil Engagement, Abdulrazak Alkali. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
All right. So that's our show for today. In case you have missed, you can always catch up across all our social media platforms and also on our YouTube channel where we always stream live. Keep a date with us tomorrow for another time on the program. My name is Ayuba Ilya.
Well, it's been absolutely a blast being here to present Daybreak this morning, and we hope you had a wonderful time watching as well. Let's do it all again tomorrow. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.